If you are over 60 years old and you fall asleep tonight without watching this video first, you may be making a choice that literally ends your life, and I realize how serious that sounds. But what I am about to walk you through is fundamentally different from any health warning you have encountered before, because this has nothing to do with your genetics, nothing to do with disease, and nothing to do with bad luck, but everything to do with specific things you are doing in the hours leading up to sleep that are quietly engineering the conditions for a heart attack or stroke to occur while you rest. And the most chilling part of all is that the vast majority of people committing these mistakes genuinely believe they are taking care of themselves. They think they are relaxing and recovering. Yet data from the American Heart Association tells us that nearly half of all fatal cardiac episodes in adults over 60 occur between 10 at night and 6 inches the morning, right there in the dark, while your loved ones sleep just a few feet away, completely unaware, which is exactly why I am going to walk you through each of these dangerous nighttime behaviors. Explain the precise biological reason each one is so destructive to the aging heart and brain, and then hand you a concrete step-by-step evening routine you can begin using tonight, not sometime next week, not after your next checkup, but tonight, and I want you to pay especially close attention when we reach habit number 3, because in my professional opinion, it is responsible for more unwitnessed overnight deaths in people over 60 than almost any other single factor, and virtually nobody in mainstream health conversation is addressing it. My name is Dr. Robert. I am a board-certified physician with more than 3 decades of experience in internal medicine and geriatric care. I have sat beside patients who made it through overnight cardiac events, and I have had to look families in the eye when their loved ones did not. And across all those years, one pattern repeated itself with haunting consistency. The patients who suffered heart attacks and strokes during sleep were not always the most medically compromised people under my care. They were often the ones who appeared relatively stable, ate decently, moved their bodies a little, took their prescriptions most of the time, but they shared a cluster of nighttime habits that were systematically undermining the very biological processes designed to protect them during sleep, and I am sharing this now because you deserve access to what I have witnessed firsthand, because most physicians simply do not have the time during a standard appointment to walk you through this with the depth and urgency it demands. So let us begin with what most people fundamentally misunderstand about the sleeping body once you pass the age of 60, because sleep is not a passive state. Your cardiovascular system does not simply power down when you close your eyes. It transitions into an intricate biological repair sequence during which your blood pressure is supposed to fall, your heart rate is supposed to decelerate, and your brain is supposed to flush out the metabolic waste that accumulates throughout your waking hours. And when this cycle operates correctly, sleep is the single most potent form of cardiovascular protection available to your body. But when certain habits interfere with it, the outcome is not merely poor rest. It is physiological disruption on a dangerous scale, blood pressure that surges instead of declining, arteries that tighten instead of opening, blood that thickens and slows instead of flowing cleanly, and inside a body over 60, where arterial walls are already less flexible and the heart is already compensating more than it did at 40, that disruption can become fatal within just a few hours. So let us start with the 5th most dangerous habit, which is consuming a large or heavy meal within 2 hours of bedtime. Now, you may have come across some version of this caution before, but what most people are never told is the precise internal mechanism at work. Because when you eat a substantial meal close to the time you plan to sleep, your digestive organs demand a dramatic increase in blood supply. Your stomach, liver, and intestines all require intensified circulation to process that food, which forces your heart to pump harder and faster at the exact moment it is biologically meant to be slowing down, and your blood pressure is programmed to drop. A major study published in the European Heart Journal that tracked over 100,000 adults across several years identified a clear and statistically significant connection between late, heavy eating and nighttime cardiovascular events, with the risk being particularly pronounced in adults over 60, and beyond that, late-night eating dramatically accelerates acid reflux in older adults. which is not merely uncomfortable because nighttime reflux can stimulate the vagus nerve and provoke dangerous arrhythmias that are significantly more likely to become life-threatening in an aging cardiovascular system. I had a patient, a 6-7-year-old woman who came to me reporting fatigue and nighttime palpitations. She ate a large dinner every evening around 9 and was in bed by 10:30. A 24-hour cardiac monitor revealed that her heart was producing irregular rhythms repeatedly between midnight and 3 inches the morning every single night. During the precise window, her body was struggling to digest a meal that was too large and eaten too late. We moved her dinner to 6:30 and reduced the portion size, and within 3 weeks, her nocturnal rhythms had completely normalized. She looked at me and said, "Doctor, Robert, I had no idea I was doing that to my heart every single night." And the truth is, most people do not. The practical rule is straightforward. Finish your last meal no later than 3 hours before sleep. Keep it light and keep the portions modest so your heart can do less work and get more rest. Now moving to the fourth habit, which is something that catches nearly everyone I discuss it with off guard, and that is going to bed even mildly dehydrated. After age 60, the body's natural thirst signals become considerably less reliable. You can be in a state of clinical dehydration and feel almost nothing to alert you, and many older adults deliberately cut back on fluids in the evening to avoid waking up for bathroom trips, which is entirely understandable as a logic but medically quite dangerous, because when you are dehydrated, your blood becomes denser and more viscous. Thicker blood travels more sluggishly through your vessels, and sluggish blood is far more prone to clotting. Now layer on top of that the natural circulatory slowdown that accompanies sleep as your heart rate drops and blood pressure decreases, and you have created near-perfect biological conditions for a clot to form and either travel to the base, heart triggering a heart attack, or travel to the brain triggering a stroke. Research published in the Journal of Cardiovascular Disease found that even mild dehydration elevated the risk of nighttime cardiovascular events by more than 60% in adults over 55, and that is from something as elementary as not drinking enough water throughout the day. I treated a 71-year-old retired man who was proud of the fact that he never consumed any fluids after 6 inches the evening because he valued sleeping through the night without interruption. One morning, his wife found him unresponsive in bed. He had experienced an ischemic stroke overnight. A clot had obstructed a critical artery supplying his brain. His blood work revealed severely concentrated blood, and the hospital team explicitly documented dehydration as a contributing factor. He survived, but permanently lost the use of his right hand, and he personally asked me to share his story so that no one else would trade their blood chemistry for the illusion of uninterrupted sleep. The solution is simple. Drink a full glass of water 1 to 2 hours before bed. Empty your bladder completely right before lying down, and keep a small glass of water on your nightstand in case you wake during the night. One extra bathroom trip is an infinitely better outcome than a stroke. Now we are entering the top 3 habits, and each one is more dangerous than the one before it. Habit number 3 is something I am personally convinced is silently taking lives across this country every single night, while almost no one connects it to heart attacks or strokes, and that is undiagnosed sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a condition in which the airway partially or completely collapses during sleep, causing breathing to stop, sometimes for 10 seconds, sometimes for 30 or more. And in severe cases, this can happen hundreds of times in a single night. Every time breathing stops, oxygen levels in the blood plummet, and the brain fires an emergency distress signal, flooding the body with stress hormones. The heart rate spikes, blood pressure surges, and then moments later, breathing resumes and the cycle begins all over again, hundreds of times, while the person believes they are sleeping peacefully. Research from Johns Hopkins University established that untreated sleep apnea triples the risk of nighttime heart attacks and quadruples the risk of stroke. And studies in the Journal of the American Medical Association estimate that more than 80% of moderate to severe sleep apnea cases in adults over 60 remain completely undiagnosed. The warning signs include chronic loud snoring, waking up gasping or choking, morning headaches, persistent daytime exhaustion regardless of how many hours you slept, and blood pressure that resists control even with medication. I had a 64-year-old female patient who had been snoring for years. Her husband had relocated to the guest room, and she assumed it was embarrassing but not a health issue. One night, her oxygen dropped so severely during a sleep apnea episode that her heart went into a dangerous arrhythmia and she woke up in the emergency room. The cardiologist informed her she had come within minutes of not waking up at all. She now uses a CPAP device and her nighttime blood pressure has dropped by 22 points. She describes it as the machine that saved both her marriage and her life. If you snore, if you wake up exhausted no matter how long you slept, please contact your doctor about a sleep study because this is not something to defer. Moving to habit number 2, which nearly every adult over 60 is guilty of, at least occasionally, and whose consequences are far graver than most people recognize, and that is skipping, delaying, or mistiming blood pressure or heart medication. Blood pressure operates on a precise 2-4-hour biological rhythm in the early morning hours between approximately 3 and 6 a.m. The body begins preparing to wake. Cortisol rises, heart rate climbs, and blood pressure surges in what is medically called the morning surge. And in individuals whose medication has worn off during the night, this surge can be catastrophic. Arterial plaques rupture under the pressure, clots form, and heart attacks and strokes occur. Studies published in The Lancet and confirmed across multiple large clinical trials demonstrated that taking blood pressure medication at bedtime rather than in the morning reduces the risk of overnight cardiovascular events by nearly 45%, nearly half. Yet most prescriptions are still written as take once daily in the morning, simply because that is the historical default, and not because it is the most protective timing for nighttime health. I am not advising you to alter your medication schedule without consulting your physician. I am urging you to have that specific conversation and ask directly whether bedtime dosing would offer you better protection while you sleep, and in the meantime never skip a dose, never take it several hours late, and never assume that feeling fine means your blood pressure is fine, because it may be spiking to dangerous levels in the pre-dawn hours while you sleep completely unaware. I had a 69-year-old patient who had been managing hypertension for 10 years and who I would describe as a casual complier. He took his medication on most days but skipped it when he forgot, or when travel disrupted his routine. He told me he figured missing a day here and there could not possibly matter much. One Tuesday morning at 4:30 a.m., his wife called emergency services. He had suffered a massive hemorrhagic stroke. He had skipped his medication 2 nights running, and the morning surge hit with nothing to counteract it. He spent 4 months in rehabilitation and told me from his hospital bed that he would give anything to go back and simply take those 2 pills. Take your medication, take it at the same time every single evening, set a phone alarm if that is what it takes, because this is the most controllable risk factor on this entire list. And now the #1 most dangerous nighttime habit in adults over 60, the one I mentioned at the very start of this video, the one I believe accounts for more preventable overnight deaths than almost anything else, and the one that receives almost no attention, precisely because it does not appear threatening in the slightest: sleeping in a room that is too warm. I know that may sound almost absurdly simple to carry such deadly consequences, but the physiology behind it is completely airtight when your sleeping environment is too warm, above 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 degrees Celsius. Your body spends the entire night working to shed excess heat. Blood vessels in the skin dilate. Your heart rate stays elevated rather than settling into its protective nighttime rhythm. You perspire and lose fluid, which further thickens your blood. Your sleep becomes shallow and fragmented, robbing your cardiovascular system of the deep restorative phases it needs for overnight repair. And critically, your blood pressure never achieves its natural nighttime decline. Research from Harvard Medical School and data published in the European Heart Journal have both identified elevated sleeping room temperature as an independent risk factor for overnight cardiovascular events, particularly in adults over 60. But here is what almost no one realizes. Sleeping in a room that is too cold is equally dangerous. Temperatures below 60 degrees Fahrenheit or 15 degrees Celsius cause blood vessels to constrict sharply, and the heart must pump against significantly elevated vascular resistance. In arteries already stiffened by decades of use, that constriction can fracture a plaque and trigger a heart attack within hours. The optimal range, the temperatures that allow heart rate to drop naturally, blood pressure to dip as it should, and sleep to reach its deepest and most restorative phases, falls between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. This is not a matter of personal comfort. It is a matter of cardiovascular physiology. A room that is 2 or 3 degrees too warm may feel perfectly acceptable to you, but your heart perceives and responds to the difference. So here is the protective evening routine I promised you. And if you follow it consistently, research suggests it can reduce your risk of a nighttime cardiovascular event by more than 40%. At 6:30 inches the evening, finish your last meal of the day. Keep it light with lean protein and vegetables, and nothing heavy or fried, and absolutely nothing to eat after that point, other than water. At 8 inches the evening, drink a full glass of water. Take any prescribed medications exactly as your physician has directed, and set a phone reminder so that missing a dose becomes essentially impossible. At 9 inches the evening, begin transitioning your nervous system toward rest. Turn off anything emotionally stimulating. Avoid arguments and stressful conversations, and dim the lighting in your home. At 9:30, set your bedroom temperature to 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Place a small glass of water on your nightstand, and if you have any reason to suspect sleep apnea, position yourself to sleep on your side with a pillow providing proper neck support. At 10 inches the evening, use the bathroom completely before lying down. Take any final medications, and once you are settled, take 5 slow, deep breaths. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system and sends a direct biological signal for your heart rate to begin its natural descent. This routine costs you nothing but your attention, and the return on that investment is a cardiovascular system that spends the night in a state of protection rather than silent physiological stress. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with something that I think about often. Your heart has been contracting on your behalf without pause for 6, 7, or 8 decades. It has never requested a rest. It has never quit without first sending you signals. But those signals are quiet, and most people are not tuned into them until something irreversible has already occurred. Your body has not given up on you, and the habits I have described tonight are entirely within your power to change, starting this evening, because what you do in the final 2 hours before sleep directly shapes what your heart and brain experience across the next 8. I want to challenge you to follow this routine for 30 consecutive nights, and I am confident you will notice measurable differences in your morning energy, your blood pressure readings, and the depth of your sleep in ways that may surprise you. Please share this with someone you care about tonight, a partner, a sibling, a friend who lives alone, because you may never fully know whose life you just extended by passing this along. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, I encourage you to do so now, because every week I release content designed specifically to help adults over 60 live longer, stronger, and more independently. Leave a comment below telling me your age and where in the world you are watching from, because I read every single one, and it matters deeply to me to know this information is finding the people who truly need it. Your heart cannot undo years of nighttime stress in a single evening, but it absolutely can begin its recovery tonight. So start right now. This is Dr. Robert, and I will see you in the next one.